There we go. How is everybody this morning?
Good.
Good. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So today we have Tony Lopez from the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals, and he's here to present on the 2020 State of Hispanic Homeownership Report. So Tony is the 2022 incoming president for NAHREP for the Seattle chapter. And he is the owner of Fresh Look Real Estate in Bellevue and is opening a branch in Tacoma. He's been in the business for a little over 16 years. He started from nothing and built his own brokerage. And I also found out on his website, he loves to coach and watch soccer and spend time with his family. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Tony. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Liz. I appreciate the warmness. So yeah, I hope everybody's doing well today. Just like Liz said, I love coaching and I love trainings and whatnot. So this is kind of the fun part of the job. So today I'm just going to try to keep it pretty brief. Maybe we'll get a little interactive. Like I said, I've done this for a little bit of time. And so I really like to give you a background on NAHREP, really their whole, our main perspective is to promote homeownership among Hispanic community, not to seclude ourselves as a group, but also be inclusive and, provide information that can help you guys. Also, I'm assuming everybody's from the real estate community to help enhance and continue to grow your businesses in itself. I know that NAHREP has provided me a great deal of bandwidth and also personal business. Just teaching people to get more education on, and finer points on how to promote your businesses to the Hispanic community. And so it's been really beneficial to myself and to our community that also has joined NAHREP as a membership. And again, NAHREP is an open organization. So please, check out our any upcoming events. I can provide that information a little bit later, but yeah, I appreciate you guys having me. I guess what I'll do now is share my screen and I will get going. Does anybody have any questions before we start? Anything else? Oh, all right, let me get the screen here. Share. Is everybody able to see my screen? Sorry, I lost. Okay, perfect. So a couple of nice points that I've kind of pointed out. The background on it is, it's a product of the National NAHREP and the Hispanic Wealth Project. So taking a lot of facts and data from the U.S. Census Bureau, they've gone through it in depth and created, why it's important that, we promote to the Hispanic community and what could be beneficial to your businesses. Pretty much what we'll do is kind of go through a couple of numbers. In the last 6 years, just the rate of home ownership has always increased. It's the only population in the U.S. that's increased year over year as far as growth. And the percentages are as such, in 16, it went up 46%, 46.2, 47, 47, and 48 through 49. So, the number of units sold, has increased year over year in the last 6 years. So there's a great amount of growth that's happening in the Hispanic community. Does anybody know? Well, I'll I'll kind of point out something. Does anybody know between 2020 and 2040, what percentage will be Latino homeowners? Any guesses on that? Like what percentage of Latino homeowners will be increased by between those 20 years? Any guesses out there?
60%?
Actually, that's pretty close. Keep going. Higher.
Higher?
I believe the population will be approximately 65-75% Hispanic, so I would think that those numbers.
That's a pretty good. So the actual answer is there's going to be a 70% increase in Hispanic homeownership over the next 20 years or 19 years now. But that's a pretty staggering number of business that's out there that can help us grow our own personal business. So as we look at the numbers, like I said, over the last year, it's the only demographic that's increased year over year for the last 6 years. In that timeline also, there's 4.7 million new households that have been accounted for of the growth. So, accounted for 35% of the new housing formation that have gone into households. So that's pretty staggering number. Again, between that, what we were just talking about, 70% of Latinos will be new homeowners. So, 4.8 million homeowners over the next 19 years. That's a pretty staggering number. So that's why we are promoting ownership of Latinos primarily. We're also, mortgage ready Latinos right now. In 2019, there were 8.3 million mortgage ready Latinos aged under the age of 45. So part of the reason, and I'm just kind of going off of the numbers of what we were talking about, is the labor force growth has been really strong among Latinos, Hispanics. Right now, it's 64% growth of jobs in the labor force, which is also, now they have money, and now they, a lot of generational transition happens there. You're getting into second and third generation Latinos in the US market that want to buy. And so what happens is now there is a great vast pool of new clients out there. And so I think it's really important to take a look at that. So kind of some executive summary, some highlights. Regardless of the job losses in the pandemic, and the restrictive credit environment, because everybody didn't have work, they actually increased their homeownership rates. And just because of the overwhelming low interest rate, obviously, as you guys know, but the Latinos had, pretty much, had a huge amount of desire to continue to own housing. Another interesting point is Latinos have less student debt. Whether that's positive or negative is yet to be seen. But Latinos, for the most part, don't take on a lot of student debt. Those numbers are probably going to trend a little bit differently now that the more Latinos are going to secondary post high school education. And so that's a trend that's definitely changing, but right now we have less debt. Another interesting thing, sorry, I didn't mean to jump ahead. Right now, what do you think the median age for Americans are currently? Any guesses?
I'm gonna guess 28, 29.
Okay. Anybody else? So the answer is 35.6 is the average age of Americans. The average age of the Latino population right now is 26. Here, I'll give you the right number here. I jumped a little bit ahead, but it's 28.6, I want to say. So there's a vast difference in the age gap right now. There's a lot of young families, young Latinos, young professionals that are now starting to buy and getting in the buyer pool. So that's affecting a lot of that buyer pool also, but it also gives you a demographic and age range of where you can target your business also. So that's a really interesting fact that I found out as we were going through the executive summary and just the report in itself. There's a lot of opportunity for growth there. And a lot of it is education based. I think previously in previous generational things for Latinos, there were a lot of disparity in, education and just general education as far as how to have home ownership. So the population is starting to get a little more educated, a little more savvy, but there is still a lot of need for education in the Latino community, which is another great point for your own businesses. Is if you're providing that just information, that is a great help to the Latino community as far as trying to create business and also helping them get into their home. So the median age is 29.8. Pardon me, I had the numbers backwards, but they're in the prime years of home buying. So the other thing is, another interesting fact is the National Association of Home Builders estimates that housing the housing makes up 16.3% of the US GDP. And in 2019, Latinos injected $423 billion in the GDP through the housing market alone. So there's a great impact that they're having on the economy also. And again, since 2000, Latinos have accounted for 17.3% of the net housing to the GDP growth. So, the gross domestic product, when you're contributing 17.3% of that, is a great significant amount of business that is being able to be given. So some of the Hispanic ownership trends, as we see, 50% of Hispanics reported wanting to buy a home sooner due to COVID-19, weirdly enough, and 52% of consumers were willing to commute farther due to COVID. So they're willing to move out farther in outlying areas, and they're still willing to buy regardless of our current COVID situation. Hispanic communities increasingly wanting to have home ownership, and it always has been the trend to want to have that home ownership. They also want to have homes that are multi-generational. 53% have said they want multi-generational homes just because they are very family oriented, and 31% want larger homes as a result of COVID. So a lot of businesses out there, and I've seen it reflected in my personal businesses. I have clients that are calling me back and saying, hey, I want a bigger house now, especially now that I'm inside my home. I think as a general demographic, everybody is wanting a bigger home because of COVID, but it's a good amount to see increase in that. So, you know, again, going back to the fact, we already went over that. You know, and this is a chart, a demographic on the growth in owner occupants units. And you can see, you know, the blue line's Hispanic community, how the growth has occurred. Obviously, when 08 through 10, you see the drop, and then you see the steady increase versus non-Hispanics. You know, we have a steady uprise in that, but the graph clearly shows that Hispanics are far out buying per se than any other community around. So really good to focus on that. Interesting facts on this, you know, the Hispanic homeownership rate in Washington itself is 45%, which is, I found it to be a really big number compared to some of the country, but 50%, a lot of Hispanics have a lot of home ownerships. I'm sorry, I didn't have the facts against, you know, non-Hispanics, but I would really like to do the contrast and comparison. You know, the percent of the population in Washington is 13% of Hispanics are Hispanics in the state of Washington. You know, our unemployment rate is 5.7%, you know, and our median price rate household income is $59,350 in the state of Washington itself. So some other encouraging facts there. You know, yeah, we're definitely driving the demand from home ownership. You know, there's like I said, the household increase is huge, and you know, and the prime, it's really interesting fact that that right now the Hispanic community is also in the prime buying age range. So how you market to the community also, it's a little more a little bit younger influence, where, you know, you can have a lot of social media impact. A lot of more Latino communities are on social media now, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. And so it's a great area of targeting for them, just because they're a younger demographic currently. And you can see the change in population for under 25. The Hispanic community continues to grow versus all the other demographics right now are actually at a lower pace. And then so we're definitely trending in population growth. So up to this point, any questions? Sorry, I don't need to talk at you guys. Any questions or any of the stats that we're going through?
Hi, Tony.
Yes.
I have one question, and it's interesting that all of this data exists, but I wonder how it's collected, because when I buy or sell homes, no one asks, or it's always optional to say, what is your race, what is your gender, what is your age, etc. Many people will not answer these questions. I just wonder how this is all arrived at.
So a couple of sources, the U.S. Census Bureau, we grabbed a lot of information from that. And actually on the loan disclosures, you know how at the end of the loan disclosures says Hispanic, non-white, or you know, African American, Pacific Islander, you know, whatever designation they have there at the end of the loan product. Actually, I was reading it. I've read this a couple of times over. So here are all the, you know, endnotes. The majority does come from the U.S. Census Bureau, Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, and all the loan originations. Usually they have a place where you mark off what they are, and so those are where the majority of these stats are coming from. And then the U.S. Bureau of labor statistics also.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and then this report is easily available. We can email it out afterwards, but this is all a compilation of it. I mean, it's very thorough and more thought out of than I'm actually explaining it. So if you'd like to have a copy of it, we're happy to provide that to you guys. Let me get back to here. And so,
Tony, do you also have this available in Spanish?
we do.
Could we get both?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think everybody's pretty, if you were in the business, we really know why right now, just in general, demographics, everybody is buying, low interest rates, the demand of COVID, everybody's staying home, the age we're entering into home ownership, the household formations and, the stimulus packages. So, these are great points. I'm going to go over some of the negative, but I don't like talking about negative so much. But again, we can give you a copy of this report. The other one that I had is this stat I found a little interesting is, that markets that added the most Latino home ownership between 2018, we actually rank 4th in the Seattle, Tacoma, Bellevue area. Right now, we added 8,500 households with a median property value of 503,000. So if you look at it over all the rest of the country, I mean, that's a pretty staggering number compared that, there's a $200,000 difference between the median property value in the rest of the country. And we ranked 4th in households added. So I thought that was a really staggering fact. I didn't personally know it until I had actually read this report. But it was, pretty staggering to see that. Boise, which isn't too far from us, is also growing at an exponential rate. Just found it to be a very curious parallel because it's here in the Northwest per se. So their rate is at 40.6%. And the median property value now in Boise is, about 300,000. So those are pretty interesting facts for our markets out here. So, and then, this will break down, the report will break down, what type of Hispanic descent they're from. So this is really interesting. And, a lot of it is, so give you a little bit of perspective on the housing affordability over the states. A lot of it is, a push towards affordable housing. Affordable housing is near and dear to my heart, not only for the Hispanic community, but just in our communities itself. A lot of these areas are getting priced out, especially here in Seattle. That I think that's a big concern. As you saw previously, 500,000 is our median price range of home ownership here. Some parts, Los Angeles, San Diego, all these parts, Miami, New York, these cities are, you can't afford to buy a house on a normal wage, quote unquote. So that's something that we have to work on as far as an organization and, as a group to create housing affordability for all. But I don't want to get into my pulpit here, but it's just something to think about. And then, really, those are the main points I wanted to go over today. Some of the facts that we have, the Latino community, 63% like to have people that speak their own language, but that's not necessarily the case. So I kind of wanted to fight that because I have found that a lot of people that come to me after the fact have actually worked with American agents. They just want to have the information in Spanish. So it creates, there's an opportunity there for everybody to work with Latino homeowners, potential homeowners, so, and pardon me, I misrepresented the percentage, but 40% of the respondents said that at least half of their buyers were conducted entirely in Spanish. And then the fact of the 63% is that more than half of their buyer transactions were made to Latinos that were actual agents. So yeah, Latino agents right now are finding great advantages because they can work with the Latino community since it's growing so much. And most of them are first-time home buyers. 47% of Latino home buyers are new to the market. It is a family affair. I think as a community as a whole, it's very family centric when buying a home. So 43% of them indicated that there were more than 2 buyers on the loan. So that's where the multi-generational home buying process also comes into play. 63% indicated that fewer than 10% of their Latino home buyers are use down payment assistance programs, which is a really staggering number to me, because I think as a real estate community, we can do a lot more to get those programs out there. I know it's kind of hard in our market, but as the expansion of new builds and expansions of everybody moving out into more broader areas, I think that's something we can definitely work on. And then largest migration right now is to Texas, Florida, and Connecticut. And I think that's as far as what I had for main points, the housing affordability, and also the Hispanic report I had personally. I'd really love to get some feedback from you as far as what you, if you had any other additional questions about the report. We're happy to send you out a copy of the report, and I appreciate all of you guys being here.
Anybody have any questions? Vicky?
Tony, this says 2020. When does your report usually come out? Is it in January or is it mid-year, or when do they update this?
This is just recently updated. We have had this. I think Abby's on the phone. I think.
Yes.
Abby, you know when the report actually comes out from the previous year?
The next one is coming as part of the Latitude event, which is at the end of September, beginning of October.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Sure. And I also put on the chat a link for you to download this report directly from the NAHREP website.
Got that. Thank you so much. This is great.
Sure.
Yeah, no, and there's a little bit of a soapbox, really. Stats and data are great, but our main purpose is to be able to help all of our communities, and create a sense of giving information out to be able to help all communities purchase homes. And the fact of the matter is that there is a vast and a great gap in just information. And I have found it in general that we assume everybody knows how to buy a home. It's a lot of the time. And not only in the Hispanic community, but in American community and, our Black communities, all of our communities are vastly, which is shocking to me, that, underwhelmed with information. And so if we can provide that information, provide that value, I think to those communities and all communities, I think we'll gain a lot more business from it. And not to say that we're only gaining business from it as a selfish point of view, but giving that information now has, the biggest satisfaction is changing people's lives, and creating wealth for them, and creating wealth for their generational family. So it's been a really interesting journey for me throughout the years. I used to do it just for money, quote unquote, and now we can be on a trajectory to help families out, create generational wealth, and give people information, and especially since there's so much business out there. So even my business model has changed a little bit on being able to create more informationals, doing first home buyer classes and whatnot. I think it's really great for your guys' businesses too. But I hope I can be of some service, be a little more eloquent. And sorry, I was a little under the weather today, but I wanted to do this Zoom today. But yeah, I hope any other questions that you guys had, or I hope you guys got something out of it today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tony. That was great. Are there any other questions? Everybody's saying thank you in the chat and that it was incredibly helpful, Tony, to review the report. And I guess we'll look forward to the new report coming out next month as well.
Yeah, that'll be great.
If anything has changed. All right, well, if there are no other questions, we appreciate your time, Tony, and for all of you that joined us today. We did record the session, so it will be available to view later this week as well, if you want to share it with anybody. All right, I'm going to end the meeting for all and enjoy the rest of your day.
I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye-bye, take care.